Chapter 10 of The Fastest Boy in the World. Kabidi had told me that you should never talk back to a policeman in Addis Ababa. They get mad at you for nothing. But it was such a special day that this policeman didn't get too angry. He even nearly smiled, and when I'd scrambled down off the windowsill, he just smacked us both over the head, but lightly, and told us to hop it. Now that the glory of seeing the athletes had gone, I was really, really worried about Grandfather. I didn't know where to start looking for him. Kabidi didn't understand at all. He was busy giving a thumbs-up sign to a friend, a boy inside a passing minibus whose face was pressed up against the window. "What are you so worried about?" he said, turning his attention back to me. "Your grandfather will be all right. He knows his way around. Look, you've never been to Addis before, have you? Now's your chance. I can show you the sights. You can tell your granddad you got lost and couldn't find your way back." I just stared at him. Not even Marcos was as daring as Kabidi. I'd never met anyone so bold and free before. For one mad moment, I was tempted to go off with him, but I knew I couldn't. "Grandfather, he's not well," I said, afraid that I sounded lame. "I'm supposed to be looking after him." Kabidi shrugged, and I was afraid that he was going to run off and leave me. But then he just grinned and said, "I'll take you back to our place then. I bet you'll find your granddad there." We got back to Piazza in no time. Kabidi was so fast, darting across rows between the cars and trucks and dodging around people on the pavements, that I could hardly keep up with him. Once, I thought I was going to get squashed flat under a van that appeared from nowhere, just when I'd stepped out into the road. Then suddenly, we were almost back at Kabidi's uncle's shop, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw that there was a cluster of people round the door. I knew, I don't know how, that something bad had happened. And I was right, because when we got there, Kabidi's uncle came out through the door, and when he saw me, he grabbed hold of me and pushed me inside. He looked upset. "Where have you been, boy? He's been needing you." Then he saw Kabidi and frowned angrily. "You? Running off again? You useless!" But I wasn't listening to him anymore, because by now my eyes had got used to the darkness inside the shop. The sunshine outside had been dazzling, and I could see Grandfather. He was lying across 3 chairs that had been pushed together and was quite still. Picture there for you. For an awful moment, I thought he was dead. A couple of women were beside him. One was fanning his face. The other was rubbing his hands, and she turned to look at me. She must have seen what I was thinking, because she said, "He's been unconscious, but he's coming round now. God is good." The other one said, "Where's he staying? He's your grandfather, isn't he? You'll have to get him home." I didn't wait a moment longer, but turned and dashed out of the shop. Cousin Wandu might be a cheat, trying to steal Grandfather's medal, and I knew I couldn't trust him, but he was a cousin after all, Grandfather's own nephew, and the only person I could think of who could help. I must have had wings on my feet, because I was round the corner and outside Cousin Wandu's house before I'd hardly started. The metal door in the high wall along the street was shut and locked. I thumped on it as hard as I could and yelled, "Cousin Wandu! Cousin Meseret! Please, come out!" At last I heard someone fiddling with the lock, and it opened, but only a crack. Cousin Wandu was looking out doubtfully. "What is it, Solomon? Why are you making all this racket for?" "Please, oh please." I could feel a sob rising up inside my chest. "Grandfather's been taken ill. He's really bad. He's just round the corner in a shop. I don't know what to do." Cousin Wandu looked almost relieved. He'd probably expected that Grandfather would come storming back in a furious temper, having found out about his cheating. He opened the door wide. "I told him, didn't I, to rest a day? I told him not to go I told him not to go running round town. He didn't go far then, only to Piazza." I could tell that what he was up to. He wanted to find out if he'd been to Atto Almu's office. I wasn't going to let on. I didn't want to distract him from helping Grandfather. "Please, Cousin Wandu, just come." "Wait here," he said, and shut the door in my face. I stood outside in the street, hopping from one leg to another, and feeling so impatient that I nearly started banging on the door again, but it was only a few minutes before he came out. "Just fetching this," he said, holding out his mobile phone to show me. "We might need to call a doctor." When we got back to the shop, I could have cried with relief. Grandfather was sitting up. He still looked awful, his head resting against the wall behind him, his mouth open and his eyes shut, but at last he was alive. "Uncle!" Cousin Wandu put his hand on his grandfather's shoulder. "It's me, Wandu. Can you hear me? Are you all right, Uncle?" "Of course he's not all right," I wanted to shout at him. "Can't you see that he's really ill?" "I think he's had a heart attack," Kabidi's uncle said. "He looks really bad. You ought to take him to the hospital. He can't stay here. He needs to be in bed." I could tell that he was getting a bit impatient with us. I suppose it was bad for his business, having sick people in the shop. He was a kind man, though. He still looked as if he was concerned. Cousin Wandu didn't answer. He just started punching numbers into his phone. Then he went outside the shop with it pressed against his ear. Grandfather's head flopped over to one side. I thought he was going to topple off his chair, so I sat down beside him to prop him up. "Grandfather," I said softly, "it's me, Solomon." I wanted to say, "Don't worry, you'll be all right," but I didn't, because I knew he would have said, "Don't be silly, boy. Only God knows what will happen, and you certainly don't." So I just sat there and waited. Kabidi's uncle had gone back behind his counter and was weighing out sugar for the woman who had been patting Grandfather's hand. The other one had gone, and the little crowd that had been hanging around waiting for something dramatic to happen had gone away too. The new customers coming into the shop hardly glanced at us, sitting in our dark corner. I felt Grandfather's arm move and looked up at him. His eyes were open. He turned towards me and was trying to say something. I couldn't make out his words. He coughed weakly and his eyes screwed up as if he had a pain. Then he tried to talk again. Did you tell Wandu about Atu Almu in the medal?" "No, Grandfather." He gave a tiny nod, and I could see he was pleased. Then he looked down towards his chest. "Take it." It took a moment for me to understand. "Take what? The medal?" He made a little grunting noise, and I could tell he was impatient with me for not understanding at once. It felt funny, really bold and cheeky, feeling under Grandfather's shawl and sticking my fingers into his pocket, but actually it was quite easy to hook out the little box. I slid it into the pocket of my shorts. Grandfather let his head roll back, and I could tell he was relieved. He hadn't finished talking, though. "Go home now. Fetch your father." I stared at him. "Grandfather, I can't. I don't know the way." "Bus," he croaked. To Kadami. Go now. Get there tonight." I felt sick with fright. Where would I find a bus? How much would it cost? Would they even let me go on by myself? Cousin Wandu came back into the shop. His voice sounded stronger than it had before, as if he'd made a decision. "I'm taking you to hospital, Uncle," he said. "There's a taxi waiting outside. We'll get you into bed there, and the doctors will see you. You'll be better in no time. Here, Solomon, help me get him up." It was hard heaving Grandfather to his feet. We almost had to carry him outside. He collapsed onto the back seat of the taxi and looked worse than ever, as if he was struggling to take every breath. Cousin Wandu was bending down to give directions to the taxi driver when Cousin Meseret came running up. "What's going on?" she said sharply to Cousin Wandu. "What's all this fuss about?" I stepped back. She hadn't seen me. "Is Uncle Demisi?" said Cousin Wandu. "He's been taken bad. You got my message then?" "Yes, and I've got to get back to work. They don't like people running off in the middle of the day, I can tell you." She bent down and peered into the taxi at Grandfather. "He looks bad. Did he get to see... Does he know?" "I don't think so," Cousin Wandu said, "and I hope he never finds out. I've had enough of your silly tricks, Meseret. I should have never let you put me up to this." "Me?" She glared at him. "You're blaming me. It was your idea. You said I did not. You were the one." "Oh, please," I said, darting between them. "Just get him to the hospital." "Hospital?" exploded Cousin Meseret. "Who's going to pay for a hospital?" "I am," said Cousin Wandu. "He's my uncle, and I'm going to do the right thing for once. Here, Solomon, hop in on the other side." I can't, Uncle," I said, stepping back. "He told me to go home. He wants me to go to Kadami on the bus now, this afternoon, and fetch my father." Cousin Wandu looked at his watch. That's not a bad idea. You'll have to be quick. There's only one bus to Kadami in the afternoon. It might have gone already. But I don't know where to go. Where do I get on it? I said, feeling panicky again. Someone tugged at my sleeve. I turned and saw Kabidi. I'll take you to the bus station, he said. I'll ask my cousin. And he darted back into the shop. Cousin Wandu looked relieved. He was about to say something when Grandfather began to cough. The cough turned into a groan. Don't worry, Grandfather. It'll be all right, I said. Kabidi will help me. Please, Cousin Wandu, just take him to the hospital. Grandfather groaned again. Cousin Wandu hesitated for a moment longer, then got into the taxi and it sped off down the street. Kabidi came out of the shop with his uncle close behind him. I suppose you'll have to show the boy the way, the old man was grumbling. But Kabidi's eyes were dancing. I know, straight to the bus station and straight back, he said with a grin. He peeped inside again to check that his uncle was busy with a customer, then lifted a few bananas off the fruit stand outside the shop. I'm starving, he said. I bet you are too. Come on, Solomon. If you want to catch the bus, we'll have to run.